Call this meeting. Call this meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee to order for January 9th, 2024. I will now, I'm supposed to say that this meeting is being video recorded. I will now read the script for remotely conducted open meetings. Good morning. This open meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is convening by video conference pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. This meeting is being video recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all phones and devices. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation, unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Use the raise hand feature in Zoom in reactions is where it is to indicate that you'd like to offer a comment. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order that they were raised. All questions should be directed to the chair. If you're not able to participate in the remote meeting, you may also submit comments to the Coastal Resilience Coordinator, Leah Hill, and request that they be read into the record. Her email is lhill@nantucket-ma.gov. Confirming member access. I am Peter Brace, Chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Okay. Gary Beller.
Here.
Sarah Boyce.
Here.
Jan Carberg.
Here.
Doug Rose.
Here.
Rachel Freeman.
Here.
Matt Thie. Well, we know he's here, he's connecting. So staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Leah Hill.
Here.
Okay. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. And we don't have any anticipated speakers. So finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay. First item on the agenda, number 3, is public comment. Does anyone have any members of the public comment? And I'm looking at you, RJ. You have any comments that are related, that are not related to anything on the agenda? Okay, RJ is silent. Number 4, discussion on topics to apply for offshore wind grant.
Peter,
Gary.
I have one comment of something that's not on the agenda.
Okay, it's public comment though.
Oh, okay. I'll wait then.
Okay. Discussion on topics to apply for the offshore wind grant submitted by the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. And I'm assuming you guys all saw the packet and all of our ideas. So Leah and I were talking before the meeting, and I think we agreed that obviously not all of our ideas will become reality. So we need to narrow those down to maybe 3 or 4 that we would that we felt good about, applying for money from for the grant. So I don't know how we're going to do this, but either looking at what you guys wrote or for yourselves or the packet, maybe Lee and I can take suggestions on what you think are the good ones. Sarah.
Thanks, Pete. So I was really excited to see the suggestions. I mean, my first quick thought is that putting together some of them. So like the translations are obviously important to everyone, but one of my suggestions was like the translations alone aren't enough. There's quite a bit of money there. So if we could do a full or a broader application that was lots of different outreach options. And I really liked Rachel's suggestion of doing some kind of video, like Yellow production style video. We've worked with them. I know you guys have too, because we find that that is a way a lot of people really connect with the messaging. And then Pete had a suggestion of doing a PowerPoint, but I think that kind of video falls into that, right? Like you don't need a presenter necessarily for that, like you would a PowerPoint. A video could be circulated more widely, and then the video could also be translated into multiple languages. So I think kind of putting a lot of those education and outreach options into one package might be a really great option. And then the only other thing as part of that with the translations, I think definitely Portuguese, oh my God, Spanish and Portuguese are obviously our highest languages on Nantucket. But if we do have room in the budget, let's say to do a third language or a fourth language, I'd rather say, we have found at my work that using the language numbers of diversity from the schools is really, really helpful because it's concrete data on the language makeup of our year-round community. And I haven't looked at it in a while, but in the past, the top 5 languages were Spanish, Portuguese, Bulgarian, Lithuanian, and I can't remember the other one. So just to keep that in mind if we're going in that route. So that's my suggestions. And just one other quick thing. I think all the suggestions we put together, maybe that becomes a list of priorities. We have a list of priorities from the Coastal Resiliency Plan, but I think kind of some of the specifics that people put in some of the suggestions can be a list we go forward with in the future with other funding opportunities.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Matt?
Yeah, is there a staff recommendation? Have staff gone through and made their recommendation? I didn't see it in the packet, I don't believe.
Leah, do you want to answer that?
Sure. Yeah, Matt, I didn't put it in the packet, but I really like the idea of what Sarah had just said. So translating the CRP and then creating that video or maybe 2 videos, one that is shorter that can go on social media and then like a longer one that explains the Coastal Resilience Plan, the hazards that we see here, and really showing footage and pictures of that's happening on the island for those that may not believe it or have forgotten about it, and then having that translated into multiple languages as well. We do know that there's a literacy issue, so the the films will help hit that point as well. So that's my top recommendation.
In addition to translation, right?
Yes. Coupling
Okay.
those 2 together for one grant application.
Okay. I'm wondering if they'll want that to be 2 things, but what you're saying is asking for them to fund 2 different things, not combining those 2 as one thing.
No, combining them as one application. So having it as like a multi-language public outreach and education or something like that, and then having a couple different tasks. So translating the CRP into however many languages, and then creating a film or 2 regarding the CRP and what CRAC's doing and our coastal hazards and future plans. And then if there's money left over, creating handouts or something like that as well.
Okay. All right, thanks. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Peter. The thought that was going through my mind as this homework was assigned is, rather than trying to come up with new ideas for how to spend money, I went back to the CRP and I just said, what is out there that either is sort of a nice bite-sized chunk size, something like the monitoring technology I thought was an interesting idea. That would be number 1-8, I think. I know Leah has some intelligence there as to where things stand in terms of funding requests for that one. But I guess my thought was, maybe back to Joanna's point from last meeting, this could be a potential strategic opportunity for us to really look at a big, meaty CRP project that we have yet to get funding for, or potentially we've only started with looking at Article 10 or some other taxpayer revenue. If the OCWF, Offshore Wind Community Fund, OWCF, if that fund is out there untapped and is already kind of inclined to be focused on coastal resilience, I think there's no better opportunity than us to go and pick off a big meaty assignment. I included in there, in addition to the monitoring capabilities, let's get started on strategic retreat and relocation. Let's see if we can get funding for that. Another one that is will be a big capital investment, obviously, is Surfside wastewater treatment plant. So, I just feel like there's a lot out there yet to be done. I know we're going to talk later in the agenda as to what are the big opportunities or big projects that we haven't gotten started yet. I guess my mind just goes to that could be an opportunity for us to focus some of this new funding on it. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Jen?
Thanks, Pete. And I see Leah has her hand up and she might be getting to what I'm going to ask. I guess my question is, as a committee, what can we apply for to manage for money? And given our charge and mission, and this is just a clarifying question I'm trying to figure out, can we just apply for something that's doing that public education outreach piece, which is part of our mission? Can we as a committee apply for funding projects, or is that something that the town has to apply for? Because I do think that is an important point that Doug brings up. Should we be spending our effort where we're getting the biggest bang for our buck? And is that doing this education piece, which I think is important, or is it trying to leverage this money for one of these coastal resilience projects that we need to move forward and don't necessarily have the money for yet? So I'm curious, kind of, Leah, what your opinion is on those pieces.
And thanks, Jen. And I'm just going to say one thing before I get to Leah. I'm thinking that the money from the community foundation, it's not going to be as much money as we might get from a state or a federal grant, or money that's going to come from whatever the town puts away and the offshore wind account. It seems to me like these grants are for smaller things that our committee can go after, things that may get shoved aside by the bigger things that need to be done. So like the translation, like the video, public outreach, things that we're working on, that was my initial thought. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. I will answer to Doug and Jen. So Jen, from my understanding is committees are kind of looped in with the town as well. And so that you can apply for any project that has to do with resiliency or sustainability or historic preservation. But I will confirm with Sunny Daly on that. And then to answer Doug, as far as the technology for the shoreline change program, we have funding that we can purchase that. So we're looking into which GPS device we want to use. And then, so that'll be settled. What were your other two suggestions? That one, the strategic retreat and relocation. So that is in for capital request. If it doesn't get funded by capital, I believe we'll be able to use the Article 10 money to move that forward. So that should be okay. And then you had a third one. Yeah.
Surfside wastewater.
Surfside wastewater. So that is actually, we have like a list of natural resources ideas as well. And that is one of them, is to look at a feasibility study for, to get that project jump started, because I'll talk later in the meeting, but the erosion there the rate is astronomical. So that's a good idea as well. We already have that in the list. So I guess it depends on what the committee wants to apply for.
All right, thanks, Leah. Sarah?
Yeah, thanks. This might be reiterating like some of what Leah just said, but I just was remembering from when Sunny spoke with us. some of it was like, she emphasized that the projects that they wanted to fund, or the committee wanted to fund, were really like, I hate to use the word shovel ready, but like basically ready to go is what she was more emphasizing. And so I think when I looked back at the CRP priorities, a lot of those projects like that Doug mentioned are like, they need that planning phase first, right? So I didn't know, I mean, maybe we could clarify with Sunny again of which ones were more ready to go. But I think between, as the money amount is like, you know, about around $50,000, I think is the cap for individual projects. It's not enough for like the larger projects. But then the ones that are sort of ready to go, I think this education and outreach piece we know is necessary. The other thing that I had put or suggested was like the as a ready to go project would be doing the, or more of the island, or for the sediment transport study, since we've only done a portion and it's kind of like an add-on. But I mean, that's my lack of knowledge of exactly how that's possible, and if whoever's doing it, you know, can move forward with it. So that was more the suggestion of like, what do we have that's ready to go that we could use the money for? And then one last clarifying question, and maybe you guys remember this because I don't, from Sunny's discussion, is when would the money be available? Because I know the grants are due at the end of the month, but I didn't know if there was a timeline established yet for the availability of the funds, because that might help with us.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll take Leah out of turn, and then Matt.
They anticipate the funding being ready in the spring. I think she had said April.
Okay, thanks. Matt?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. In about 3 months, 4 months, they'll be available. I'm not sure if it's Sunny that you should talk to, Leah. I think it's probably Lauren Sinatra, because the town is gonna be doing its kind, you know, sort of, she's putting together how the town's gonna vet the projects or prioritize the projects. So you could reach out to her as well. And my only other comment, I think if, yeah, and I think I think Sarah had it right, is what we need to show something finished. You know, some project or something, you know, if we can like put the money to something that's that'll finish it off, or what, you know, as opposed to, I think people want to see, what did we do? You know, so you know, not 50 grand isn't going to finish, you know, Sacagawea Pond, etc. But, you know, something that people can see, okay, these are the things we're going to be doing for coastal resiliency. We're not going to just talk about it, and we're not just going to do studies and hire people. We actually got things done. You know, at some point, the sooner we can do that, I think the more people will be positive, you know, we'll get on board. I mean, I think we could do a lot of PR, but I think, you know, part of the PR is showing them completed things.
Thanks, Matt. Jen?
Thanks, Pete. I think as far as the whole shovel-ready project idea, like I don't think we would want to go after, say, a study to decide what we should do at a site. But I do think that we could go after design and permitting that could be accomplished in a year, with the idea that here's this project that then in the following year we would be implementing, because that's just how those projects work. So you could show that we were making steps forward. I do like the education piece, but I hear what Matt's saying, that it would be nice to actually make a significant step forward on something. But that I would leave to Leah to help us figure out what that could be, because she's in the trenches of prioritizing how those projects are happening.
Thanks, Jen. Rachel?
Thank you, Peter. I think this has probably been said, but I'm going to just reiterate it, that I feel the reason that I put in outreach funding is because I feel that $50,000 is a really small amount of money. And even when you start looking at design and engineering for projects and permitting, you know, you're way over 50 really quickly. So we need, you know, so I wanted to make a compelling statement for this grant, because unless we can say, oh, it's $100,000 for design and engineering, and here's our other 50 match, right, which is kind of way more complicated. I was thinking that maybe it was a kind of an easy case to make, that we could actually spend this on this and complete a project start to finish. I completely agree with the desire to accomplish and move forward with some of these projects. And, you know, we kind of do, I'm gonna say this and not mean it in a negative way, but we're kind of falling back on outreach because it's something we can do, right? It's something we have been able to accomplish, whereas some of these larger projects are really daunting and really expensive. And it's really kind of outside of our purview, right? It's really, once we get into Leah and Vince, and those guys need to be writing these big grants that are looking for money for these, you know, multiple hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars projects. So I guess that was just my opinion, was that the 50 grand is limiting in some ways, and we want to choose wisely based on that. And it's not that I don't think everyone else's ideas are fantastic. I think they're great ideas and totally worthwhile. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Doug, go ahead.
Thanks, Peter. I was rereading my minutes from the last meeting when Sunny presented to us, and I don't recall her saying that 50 was a hard cap. I got the impression that depending on how compelling the grant application might be, it could be significantly higher than that. So that's one thing to maybe confirm. The second thing is, she did say explicitly that while fully implementable projects are generally preferred, important planning projects would also be considered. So that's kind of going back to why I don't think, if it's more than 50, let's say it's 100 or 200,000, that's still not going to be enough to satisfy, I think, Matt and our collective craving to accomplish some big capital funding project. It's not going to move Surfside wastewater plant. That's not going to happen, right? So what can we accomplish? Well, we could go back and do more investments in outreach. I'm personally kind of, that doesn't really excite me. And I keep going back to the comment Joanna made. I think this is an opportunity to be strategic. Let's pick off something that is relatively modest, maybe in its total investment cost, but would be really important. So, you know, okay, it's not the monitoring technology, but what else is in that same kind of category, 100, 200K, that by getting this grant, we could actually go out and get done in a year. And I don't know specifically what that is, but that's kind of what I'm craving in all of this discussion. I hope that makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. So I totally understand, you know, shovel ready, but the CRP projects, none of them are shovel ready right now. Most of them need that feasibility assessment or that extra risk assessment that, you know, the CRP did a risk assessment that was overall for the island. And so I think that's going to be hard to apply for a grant for, because we need those preliminary studies and surveys done, like Rachel had mentioned. And also when it comes to design and engineer, it's way more than $50,000 for these types of projects. So I was just looking at the list of recommendations that their target implementation date, and I'm going to go over this later in the meeting. Now I'm thinking it probably would have been better to do it first, but some of the things, so there's one, the Surfside Emergency Access Planning, that implementation dates for 2025, and that's looking at the road off of Nonantum and sort of rerouting that, which would be relatively easy, and that cost estimate is about $50,000. So that could potentially be a project as well. And then I have on our list too is starting the building scale resilience at 37 Washington Street. So the finance department building, which has already been flooded once, and doing a feasibility study there. And then also having some money to be able to start implementing whatever that study says. So like switching out the doors so that they're waterproof, you know, et cetera. So that could be another one. My suggestion is, you know, there's no cap on how many grants CRAC can apply for. So maybe you pick 2 or 3, and maybe one of them is a planning grant, and then the other one is if you decide to do the public outreach. I will say too that we don't have money for public outreach for this type of project that you guys are talking about. I know some members have been saying, you know, there's money here and there, but I don't know where it is. So, or what other grants to apply for that would cover that. So that's something to think about as well.
All right, thank you very much. Leah, go ahead, Gary.
Well, when I look at this, I really think about, it's really the methodology that we should use to make these decisions. And to me, we start off with the fact that we already have set up a system, a schedule of priorities. And so we've done that already. And I know when Leah puts her charts up once in a while, she shows these various projects and what priority they are, 1, 2, or 3, or 4, something like that. So we already know what we have in front of us and what their priority is. And now what we have to do is take a look at those projects based on the priority that they have, based on our judgment already, and see if they fit within the grant specifics. I think that's the system we have to use to do this.
Thanks, Gary. Rachel?
Thanks, Peter. I have to get on my soapbox for a minute. I'm sorry, I can't help it. I feel really strongly, and the more I engage in this, the more strongly I feel about it, that we are inadequately doing outreach to our community, and our community is an extremely diverse community and that speaks multiple different languages, and that I love the idea of applying for multiple grants, because I do see the value in planning, and it's not that I don't see the value in that. I just see that we have really been focusing our outreach efforts at CRAC to one demographic. And I think we really need to be considering that there's way, way more people out there on this island that really need information. And we haven't diversified our mechanisms for reaching those different communities yet. And I think this is an opportunity for us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Go ahead, Abby.
Hi guys, thank you. Good morning. I just wanted to second kind of what everyone else is saying, but especially what Rachel was saying. I don't know how many of us speak another language, Spanish speaker, but I definitely agree that there's I also think if we want to be realistic about the likelihood of getting funds, I think that this is a really good opportunity for us to really beef up outreach. As Leah mentioned, like if there's money, we don't know where it is. So this is a really good chance for us to do that. And I think we really should take the opportunity to reach out to our kind of non-primary English speakers on the island, because it would be a really good. And I think that, as Rachel pointed out, I think there's just like a lot of gap in education and knowledge. So I think that would be great. And also I felt like Doug made a good point is, you know, if we start with something smaller, and Leah, as you said, we can apply for multiple things, but I think that that would be something that is definitely like digestible and wouldn't necessarily cost a super high amount, but the impact could be really, you know, beneficial. So I just wanted to.
Thanks, Abby. Wait, no more hands? Okay, then I can jump right in. So I really love Rachel's idea of a video, and I couldn't agree more about reaching out to all the other groups that share the island with us and getting our message to them, as well as the rest of us. So my question for the committee is, are we gonna decide at this meeting which things we want to apply for, or do we want to take 2 more weeks and narrow it down to 3? And I mean, I'd rather decide now, but on the other hand, the agenda is long, so we can't spend too much more time on this. What do you guys all think? Leah, go ahead.
Can I jump in 1 second? I believe you need to decide this meeting because they're due January 31st, and so that's not going to give enough time to complete the application by that time frame. And I also will probably need help with the application. So if there's any committee members that are willing and able to help, that would be great. Unless a committee member just wants to take it on themselves, and then, you know, I can help when necessary.
Okay, well then can we come to some sort of consensus of what we want to apply for? I'm thinking it's gonna be the video, and translations. But that's what I'm thinking. What are you guys thinking? Sarah?
Yeah, I guess one question I had, I didn't know if this was like a voting item or is this just discussion and then Leah decides, because as like, it's not necessarily coming from their committee, it's coming from the town. I guess I just want to know what the procedurally, you know, like we can make recommendations, but I think, and we can help. But I don't know if like the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee is technically applying for it, or how does that work?
Can I answer that, Peter?
Go ahead, Leah.
Yeah, so it's open for committees to apply to. So CRAC can apply on behalf of CRAC.
So Sarah, do you want to, I guess I'm just going to go around my screen and see what people want to do so we can give Leah an answer. So what do you think? What should we apply for?
Did you ask me directly? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm asking you directly.
Okay. I think there's lots of great ideas. I think for this particular funding source, I would say an overall outreach package that includes the video and translations. And I'm happy to help Leah. I can't write it myself. I'm also working on other grant applications, but I can help.
And I can help, you know, given all the information, I can write it. I can write whatever narrative that you need to explain it to Sunny. If I have everything in front of me, I can do that easily. Gary?
Well, I agree that the communication of our plan to the island community is one of our highest priorities. And as I was saying before, we should focus on what the priorities are. Communication of the plan was one of the initial steps we had to take, and it's not completely done yet. And appealing, you know, to being able to translate this into a method that lots of other people can see the plan sounds like it fits exactly in with an important priority for the entire coastal resiliency plan. I like it.
Okay, Jen.
Yep, I think it sounds like the outreach piece, that proposal with both the translation and the video, et cetera, is an easier reach for what we're doing kind of in the next few weeks. And then I think if it was possible to do a separate application to do more than one, but I think that would be fine, but I would leave that up to what Leah's capacity is right now, because unless someone else can volunteer to write one, putting, you know, together a grant application is extensive. I can review, but I'm also working on grant applications in the same time frame, and so can't put one together for this.
All right, thank you, Jen. Doug, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's a consensus building here for more focus on outreach, and I can understand why that makes sense on one angle. It doesn't excite me as much as some of the other ideas, but I can get behind it. I am curious if Leah had learned more from her conversation with the communications office as to what the real actual cost of doing a digital version of the CRP in another language would actually cost. Because I was surprised actually that 17K was as low as it was. But I'll leave it to Leah to answer that. Thanks.
Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, that 17K is for the whole CRP package, so all of the graphic designs and all of that. So it would essentially be what you see online, but in a different language.
That's great. Thank you.
And before I go to Rachel, you know, I think this first grant that we apply for will then, when we get feedback from the Community Foundation, from Sunny, will give us an idea of how much more we can ask for, and whether we are asking for the right things in the right way. And I know we have the experts here to to fill out the grant application correctly, but then even then we'll get feedback from the Community Foundation so that we know how to ask better in the future. Okay, Rachel.
Thank you, Peter. I think you all know where I stand on this, but I really like the idea of translating the CRP and doing, like Leah said, maybe 2 different forms of videos depending on cost, and really trying to hone in on what would be the most versatile forms of media for people. And then I like the idea of potentially adding in and or earmarking one of the smaller projects that Leah discussed for funding, either, having that in our minds for the near future. And I don't know, Leah, I think you're probably really busy. So saying to do 2 right now is maybe not the easiest thing, easy for me to say. I am happy to help. So.
Thanks, Rachel. And I think it would be helpful for all of us to know how much we can ask for. I could have sworn I heard Sunny say that the amount of money they're dealing with for 2024 was 2 million, and that was the whole amount that everyone can apply, that they're available to dole out for grants. Whether we can ask for all of that, probably not, but I'm thinking we can ask for more than 50,000. But it'd be helpful to find out what our cap is. Then we can all figure out what the priorities are. So, do you have something to add to that, Leah? Go ahead.
Yeah, and Matt might be able to explain this a little bit more since he's on the committee for it, but it's my understanding that for the town's portion, it's $250,000. So that's the town and the committees and the boards, and that they don't want to spend that whole $2 million the first year. So that's why they're capping the project at $50,000, because they want it to be able to stretch over 1 or 2 or 3 years.
Okay. All right, Abby, your thoughts?
I mean, I think, like Rachel's clear, I definitely think this is a good idea. Based on, I think that, although, like Doug, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of stuff, and I think that maybe we can see if with like the state funds, like other funds, that some of those projects, like, let's not forget them and just see if there's other ways to pursue those, because I think that there are a lot of really interesting ideas. But I think that this would be a good fit considering what the budget is and the timing and also I think if you even take a step back and look at kind of like town priorities, like I said, being strategic about something that we're applying and like how it relates to what we're trying to do as a community, I think will also increase the likelihood of us possibly getting money. So I would just throw that out there as well.
All right, great. Thank you. And Matt?
Yeah, just the WIN committee is sort of feeling its way as much as we are here. There, that committee is trying to figure out, what's the right thing to do, how they're going to do it. We've got some ideas, but it's a work in progress, just like we are in some ways. So there is concern that if we give it all away the first year, then there's no money and we don't have anything coming in for a while. So that was why the direction was in the 50 grand range. I'm not going to talk about what we're doing in case I sit on it, although I may not even sit on it because I'm sitting here. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But I think you've got to realize that, that committee is trying to figure out what the best way to do it so the money is not squandered, and we don't look back a year later and go, boy, we got a lot of studies and no work done, So thank you.
All right, thank you, Matt. So it sounds like we got consensus for this translation video combination going for that grant. I don't think we need to take a vote on that. Leah has heard us. She's taking notes. So we all just nod our heads. I'm saying the right things. Yes. Okay. There are 4 members of the public here. Do you guys have anything to say on this topic? Okay. All right, excellent. Thanks everyone for their hard work on the homework over the holidays. Very much appreciated. We'll move on to number 5, discussion on Conservation Commission letter about pools and designated floodplains. So, you know, we all worked on that to create a letter that would go to the Concom, basically motivated by some property owners who came in and had things to say about pools being built in their neighborhoods. And then I was advised by, I was advised by Jeff Carlson, the head of the Nantucket, the Natural Resources Department, that it wouldn't be wise to send the letter to the Concom because we are not, and we kind of talked about this while we were creating the letter, and we got advice from Mr. Fee. We're not put in place to address individual property owners' needs, basically is what it is. That's for them to go to the regulatory boards and to the select board for. We're broader. We are island-wide. We are neighborhood at the very most granular level. So it wasn't really a thing for us to do to send that letter. Just wanted you to know that's why I didn't send it. Plus the review of the Conservation Commission's proposed amendments to its bylaw hadn't happened yet, wasn't going to happen that week, so there was no rush. We didn't know when that was going to happen. We were, I guess, misinformed. We were thinking it was going to happen that Thursday, but it wasn't actually. Actually happens this coming Thursday. So there's plenty of time for us to write a letter. And as you'll see in the next agenda item, well, anyway, so does anyone have any comments?
I do. Yeah, Peter, I'm not so comfortable with you talking with Jeff and making a decision that flies in the face of the expressed desire of all of the members of this committee to send a letter. So I don't think that's a proper thing for you to be able to do. Just you talking with Jeff Carlson, and after we talked about it and decided that we'd like to send a letter. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that I tuned into the Conservation Commission hearing, and the conclusion I came to is that we missed the deadline anyway, that they had already approved these pools. And so that's what I thought you were going to say now. What I thought you were going to say now is that Jeff told you that the discussion at the Conservation Commission had already occurred 1 or 2 meetings before, and the approval had been given. And therefore, it didn't make any sense for us to send a letter because we were trying to influence the decision of the Conservation Commission, but that decision had been made at prior meetings. That's the second thing I want to mention. The third thing I want to mention, I was very distressed when I was listening to that discussion, because as part of the discussion about these pools, and I forget whether it was with the specific taxpayers who had applied or it was another project, but at some point during the hearing, someone raised the question as the applicant was asking the commission for approval to do something. I think it related to pools, and said, is the proposal, it was somebody was making a proposal for a hot tub. And the question was, does the hot tub proposal meet the coastal resiliency plan issues? And what distressed me was the answer that was given, not by Ian, who was the chair, Ian Golding, who was the chair. It was given by the staff member. I don't know his name. He's the guy that staffs the Conservation Commission. And this is what he said. He just blew it off. He said, the coastal resiliency plan is not currently part of the wetlands regulation. Boom, forget about it. That to me was very upsetting. After all of the work that we did to get the select board to agree to send a notice to all of the boards that it's very important that in their planning and thinking, they think about the CRP And here's this guy, the staff guy for the Conservation Commission. He just blew it off saying coastal resiliency plan is not currently part of the wetlands regulation and therefore not an issue. I didn't like that very much. I'm unhappy about it. I don't know what to do about it.
Okay, Gary, I'm gonna address your three things. In the packet are the proposed changes to the wetlands bylaw, and one of those proposed changes is mentioning the coastal resilience plan, that when you apply to the Concom, when you put in a notice of intent, that you are to consider all of the things that are pertinent to your situation through the eyes of the coastal resilience plan. So that person will, I can't pronounce his last name, who is the administrator for the Conservation Commission, was correct. He was saying it's not currently part of, but there is a proposal to make it part of it. So there's that. I don't know what that was all about, but the actual hearing starts on the public hearing starts this Thursday at 5 p.m., the Conservation Commission meeting. So, and I didn't just call up Jeff Carlson and say, hey, what do you think about this? I got an email from Jeff Carlson said, that's not a good idea to send that letter. So I apologize for not going to the board and saying that we're not sending the letter, but I was advised by the head of the department not to send the letter. So there wasn't any sort of collusion or, trying to subvert what the committee did. If you want, I can send you the email that Jeff sent me and you guys can look at it and see if I was acting inappropriately. But Matt kind of hinted at it when we were talking about doing this letter and saying that we need to be more general and we need to not focus on individual property owners. And I agree with that. But I went with what the committee said for me to do. Then I got the email from Jeff. So go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'm okay with you're not sending the letter, Peter. I think, but I do think the issue, these are big issues that I'm not sure we as a town are dealing with. I got an email today and there's a pool that's been approved on 63 Baxter Road. So the house is being moved back, which is great. But then there's a pool going in an area that wants to be protected. And so, so is that something that makes sense? And in my mind, it doesn't make a lot of sense that we've got a at-risk area that we're dealing with. Why would we make it worse? And I do think I think the Concom has the, ability right now to be stricter on some of these things. If these pools are interfering with the ground flow, interfering with other things, they could probably say no now, but they just haven't. And the pressure I believe that they're under and the department heads are under is all, is immense. And I think that's, so it brought to mind to me, when we've been talking about SBPF and what should happen in public access and all the things we've been talking about for 10 years there, trying to find a path forward, pools on the bluff have never been even, hasn't even been discussed. I didn't think, I'll speak for myself, that was even about, something that people would be considering. And so I think that, is that something that we need as a board, do we need to send a recommendation, regarding pools or regarding hardscaping and some of these issues that just seem to only go one direction? So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. I just wanted to circle back to one of Gary's comments. So just to clarify, Jeff had sent that email advising not to send the letter because of the filing for the pools had already been discussed and voted on meetings before. And so that if you were then to send a letter about a specific filing, then that sort of, it gets a little bit potentially damaging for, the commission's, what they had voted on and what they supported. So I can send you the email chains for all of you guys to read, but it was really that the pools had already been approved by the Conservation Commission And then CRAC was going to send a letter after they had been approved saying, you know, hey, pool shouldn't be in the flood zone, blah, 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 whatever. He also mentioned it's fine to send a letter, you know, supporting or commenting on any of the regulation updates and keeping it broad. But when you start to comment on specific filings for different commissions and boards, it gets a little bit messy.
I thought the letter that we agreed was not very, very specific. I thought we took pains to make sure we weren't commenting on a specific application. Isn't that what we agreed to? Taking care that we were not jumping into the middle of a particular application.
We did.
That's what the letter was.
We did, and I took pains to make sure that I didn't talk just about
Right.
Mariner Way. I mentioned other areas that were susceptible to coastal storm flowage, like the neighborhood of Smiths Point and Brant Point and other areas. But I just think that Jeff is hypersensitive to it, and that's why. So, but we have.
I happen not to. I have.
I'm not done yet, Gary.
Peter, I happen not to agree with Jeff, and I think our letter was broad enough to express the concerns that we as a committee had and believed in and wanted to communicate.
Okay, so what I was gonna say is that we'll have another opportunity to do that. Because on Thursday, there is the public hearing for the wetlands regulation for their amendments. And I guess we might as well just go right into that one. I'll be at that meeting. I'll be making a statement, but hopefully that the statement will be informed by all of you guys what you want me to say based on the regulations in the packet and the proposed changes. So, and then we can revise, because there'll probably be a continuation of that hearing and maybe another continuation. We can, as we had sent our first letter to Ian Golding saying that we support what the Conservation Commission is doing in relations to coastal resiliency within its amendments to its bylaw. We did that in sort of a general way to say, we support you, but we'll come back with a more refined letter as we see how the public hearing goes. So we'll have an opportunity to say all that again and send probably the substance of that letter. I think Jeff was just saying it was the wrong time to send the letter, and he's the head of the department. If he says not to send the letter, then there was no time to hold a meeting to tell you guys, and I'm sorry, but
Apology accepted.
okay. So we'll move on to number 6, discussion on the chair attending and speaking on behalf of CRAC at the Conservation Commission's updated wetland regulation public hearing on January 11th, 2024 at 5 p.m. You know, I'm going to come up with some sort of statement. I don't know if I can't do that at this meeting, but I most certainly will take ideas from everybody on what you want me to say at the meeting. And of course, you're permitted to go to the meeting yourselves. Leah, do you want to say something about open meeting law?
Yes, thanks, Peter. If you're planning to attend the meeting, just please let me know. I would suggest, if you're not going to be commenting, just to watch it on the YouTube, and then then we don't have to worry about open meeting law, because if there's a quorum at CRAC, then we have to, or sorry, quorum at that meeting, then we have to take certain steps. So please let me know if you want to attend the meeting on the Zoom link, and then we'll go from there.
Rachel?
Hi, thanks. I just have a question about this. What type of comments are appropriate for this forum?
So I would look at in the packet, in the bylaw, which has been highlighted in blue, the changes. I would look at pages 50, 58, 63, and 148. and maybe you'll spot some others as you go through it, but those are the places where it's relevant to us. Of course, coastal resilience, and I'll just say those again, pages 50, 58, 63, 148. You know, the word resilience is mentioned, and coastal resilience is mentioned throughout the document. But it's worthwhile going through. You don't have to read every single word, but you find where the blue is, and you can see where the Land Council has made comments, has made helped make changes. The blue, as I understand it, is the new language. So, you know, obviously, you know, I'll make some sort of statement that has to do with pools, which has to do with the wetland, the buffer zone between salt marshes going from 25 to 50, which has to do with, you know, minimum groundwater clearance of 2 feet. You know, basically those are the 3 things I would comment on. I don't know how I'm going to say them, but as you can tell, I'm tripping over my words, so I'm not very good at going from the cuff, and I want to be polished for that meeting, so I'll most likely type something out and read it. But this is the opportunity for you guys to tell me what you think I should say, presuming that you read the packet. I know it was a long packet, but.
So I guess here's my question. I'm sorry, can I follow up on my question, Peter?
Or Rachel.
Okay. I'm wondering if now is a time to continue to raise new things that we think should be included and haven't been included in the regulations. If now is just a time to comment on changes. Yeah, I guess that's my question. Do we get to add, should we be recommending kind of additions, or should we just be commenting on the proposed changes?
Well, I think now is the time to do that, because if it's the public hearing where they're talking about it, they've put out, here are our changes. Here's what we think here's how we want to amend it. They've obviously spent a lot of time on it, and they're looking for public feedback. Well, we're the public, and we're going to give them feedback. And so we think you should do these things. However crazy they are, this is the time.
Okay, so I guess the one that sort of jumped out at me, and I don't know how these things link, and this is a bit of a jump, and then I'll stop talking, is, you know, and I know coastal resiliency districts aren't really designed yet, and I know that they're not really tied to the wetland regulations. And I noticed there's these kind of coastal risk areas, but I'm trying to think, is there a way to sort of link up some of these different designations? Is now a time to be thinking about that? This is like not a well-formulated thought in my head yet, but is it a time to start trying to bring some of these together? I know they're not all ready to go, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, what I would say, Rachel, is yes, it is the time. The select board hasn't totally worked it all out. They went on what we said. This is what this is what we think of the concept of coastal resilience districts, and this is how we advise you. And now their town council is working on that. But I think it bears mentioning to the Conservation Commission, you know, you guys need to keep this open for coastal resilience districts, because those will be things that will probably need to be within that bylaw. So I think it's worthwhile me somehow bringing that up. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. I wanted to point out that in this proposed update, the buffer zone changes are not being included in it. So those are separated out, and there'll be different public hearings for that portion of it.
Okay. Matt.
Yeah, just quickly on the coastal resiliency districts. Town council is writing that up right now. My sense is that will take years. That'll take 3-5 years if it's a home rule petition to get passed. And so I'm trying to recommend that we do as much as we can with betterments, so that the town knows what it can do with betterments and can use betterments to ensure that property owners, as you know, in an area, do the things they're supposed to do. I don't think we should be waiting for coastal resiliency districts. I'm not sure where I stand. And even if town council hands, a written coastal resiliency district recommendation for this town meeting to the public, I don't see how we're gonna get it done. How we're gonna look at it, vet it, see if it's right, think of all the different aspects of it, sort of stress test it. I don't know how we're gonna stress test it by this spring. So, does it come to us? But, what do we know? Does it go to the consultants? Are people gonna put different scenarios to it? I have no idea. I just don't, I think it's premature to think that we're gonna have something good for this spring. I think bringing the concept up on Thursday, Peter, is a great idea, that we've got things we have to do in these areas, changes to Concom, changes to regulations of the town, and et cetera. We should bring that up, but I think that we're not quite there yet. Thank you.
Okay. Gary, go ahead.
Leah, could you explain when you said that the buffer zone changes are not at this hearing? Are those the controversial provisions that we are for, but that the real estate brokers are not for? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, those are the changes. So going from 25 feet to 50, extending them basically by 25 feet each. So it would still be, I believe, 100 feet, but where you can't have structures would be extended. So yeah, the controversial piece that that will not be in this public hearing part.
Why not?
I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that when I talk to the conservation agent.
Sounds like politics to me.
I don't know. I'll let you know when I do.
Okay.
So Leah, does that preclude me from saying anything on that? I'm not supposed to mention that since it's not on the, not up for discussion? Because I'm representing crack when I read whatever I'm gonna read. And, presumably we all agree that the going from 25 is a good thing. So, is the Concom basically saying we don't want you to put that on the record now? Or I'm not understanding.
Yeah, I'll have to double check, Peter. I would imagine that you could comment on what you feel comfortable commenting on, whether it includes the buffer zone changes or not. But I will double check with you with that and get back to you.
Okay. I'll get to you, RJ, when we're done with the discussion. Okay. Anyone else have comments? Anyone else want to tell me what I'm going to be saying? Gary?
I think you should comment on it. You know how, what our feeling is.
Yes.
And the more they hear that the crack is, in favor of this, that's part of our job, is to let them know how we feel about it, even if they're not ready to rule on it right now, or at least have the hearing on it now. At least we should continue pushing that in the direction we want it to go, because we know there'll be resistance from some others.
I agree with you. How do the rest of you guys feel? Doug?
Totally agree with what Gary just said. And I think part of the value of you speaking to it is that it's a reminder to Concom that there are people paying attention to this that actually are very supportive of what they're developing. And all they've been hearing is a chorus of negativity. So I think we could serve to really, your words could balance that out quite a bit. Thanks.
And so I know that it's, there's no time for us to hold a meeting for you guys to review what I say, but I'm gonna go to the office and have Leah and Vince look at it so that I'm not saying anything stupid, which sometimes I do. So go ahead, Rachel.
Sorry, sometimes my computer doesn't want to unmute. Thank you very much, Peter. I'm just wondering, or wanted to make sure that, there was some generic statement coming from crack that said, or at least proposed this, that basically said that, I don't know how to phrase this, but, that can, I'm trying to think what the best way to say this is. Continued development in at-risk areas is concerning. In at-risk areas being coastal zones or, like Matt was just talking about the pool in Baxter Road, or, areas of high groundwater where you constantly have to be pumping out your basement. And it's some generic statement basically that said that we see this, and I don't know if I represent everyone, so I really need feedback, but that as a committee, we're kind of concerned about this ongoing trajectory. And that the Concom, ultimately is only one mechanism, but it is a mechanism for control and regulation for things like this.
I completely hear what you're saying, and this is where I get into the territory of saying things stupid. So, but I will think it through, and I'll make a generic statement, but I will mention the critical areas where things are going to go to crap over a certain amount of time, and say that this is something that the Concom needs to be aware of if they're not already. I'm sure they're aware of, the eventual fate of Smith's Point, that neighborhood, and the people who live along the storm pathways of the ponds, and, sorry, Gary, but Brant Point, and the lower part of town. And, if it's not us saying it, who's going to say it? I can make a general statement, but I'm also going to be specific, and they will hear us. And if there's anyone here that's hearing me that's saying, "Oh God, Peter, don't say that," let's hear it now, so I don't let you down.
Agree.
Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Kind of piggybacking on what Rachel was saying, I think maybe like with the letter that was being written about the pool, I do agree that, that was so specific that because it was about pools, but you can use some of that general sentiment that everybody worked on about if you want to make a more generalized statement. So I think at some point, maybe not right now, we do write another generalized letter if we want to the Concom, but I think using that overall, like, I thought I would say this better. But a generalized statement about what we know, and as you both were saying, like, we all know, but I think without having those districts set up yet, there are things that we can point to. I think naming specific neighborhoods is helpful to some people to visualize, but then if you name specific neighborhoods, that's also to the exclusion of areas that are vulnerable that maybe didn't make that list. So I think twofold, making a generalized statement about, vulnerable areas that include erosion, include sea level rise, storm surge, blah, 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 all those things that we know. But I think another really important thing, Peter, is to remind the Concom that we are available as a resource. I know we have Concom representation on this body, but they don't always show up or represent, and it's just because they're changing over more frequently. But if there's specific questions, it's kind of just a reminder that we're here and that we can be a resource and we can work together. And so that's just another kind of way to make as part of a generalized statement.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes, I very much appreciate all the comments from you guys. Is there anyone else that wants to add to what I'm going to try to say? Okay, some people are smiling, some people are looking at the computers. All right. I won't let you guys down, and Vince and Leah will look at it, so nothing will come out of my lips and unapproved.
Peter, can you just vote on it that you can speak on behalf of CRAC at the public hearing?
Okay. Someone can make that motion.
Motion to as moved. As suggested, yes. Peter should speak.
Can you be a little more specific, Doug? Just
No. Motion to have Peter as chair speak on behalf of CRAC at the upcoming Concom discussions relating to wetlands bylaws amendments.
do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All is in favor, roll call vote. I'm just going to go across my screen. So Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman,
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Abby De Molina,
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Okay. We'll take public comment on this issue. I know RJ, you did have your hand up. Do you still have something to say?
Yes, thank you, Chair Brace. RJ Turcott on behalf of the Nantucket Land and Water Council. Just a clarifying point, I was at the meeting where they decided on how the format of this Thursday is going to be. Commissioner Engelborg, who's the vice chair, basically decided that they should try, since these updates have been on the books for a couple of years now, they should try to at least get the ones through that aren't as controversial and then revisit the wetland buffer ones and those things later. I'll leave it to you guys if you think that's political or not, but that is how we got here. Just this morning, I submitted a letter on our behalf detailing the last 50 years of wetland buffer science and riparian zones and wildlife pathways and all that, including supporting research and documents. And if you folks are interested, I can pass that along to Leah to distribute to you guys for future comment letters. Thank you.
Yes, please do. In fact, I'd love to see it before I write my own, so I'm not too
Okay.
repetitious.
I'll send it now. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Deanne, you have something to say?
Yes, Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, and who are you and who do you represent?
Oh, I'm Deanne Atherton and I'm with the Coastal Conservancy, but I'm just speaking for myself. I just wanted to say, and I thank RJ for his comment. My understanding that the reason that the buffer zones were not extending the buffer zones were not going to be dealt with this week in the current set of modifications to the wetland regulations was that the commission was waiting for scientific evidence to justify the rationale for extending the buffer zones. So it's not as if they were backing down from it. They were just waiting to document this recommendation more fully. And thanks to the Nantucket Land and Water Council, it sounds like they now have that.
Right, thanks, Deanne.
Thank you, Peter.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, gonna move on to number 7, discussion on developing an informational sheet regarding coastal risks and coastal resilience issues on Nantucket to hand out to real estate agents. So this is developing text for real estate agents as well as text for the buyers. And you know, basically this is homework for the next meeting. Do you want to help? Can you help me explain a little bit, Leah?
Yeah, sure. So thank you all for giving me your input about what to include on the continuing education class that I'm developing for real estate agents, and also for a handout to give to real estate agents. I met with Shelley Lockwood a couple of weeks ago, and she gave me feedback about all of your suggestions, and her comments were to keep it easy to understand and to break it. It would be helpful to break it down by neighborhood and work the coastal resilience projects or recommendations in for each neighborhood. So here's the neighborhood, here are the risks that it's facing today, here are the risks that it's facing in the future, here are the CRP recommendations to help mitigate those risks. She also said to keep it short and kind of give sound bites, and that maps are good and pictures are good, but if you add tables and that sort of stuff, you lose you lose the real estate agents. So there, and also depending, once we have a draft of this, she said to send it to the third party person that we're working with that puts on these classes, that is licensed by the state to do so, to make sure that the content that is in the handout can be given to the real estate agent, and they can then use that and tell the prospective home buyer. So they really have to stay in their lane. They can't comment about stuff that they're not experts about. So for example, she said for, what's an example? Oh, for lead paint. So they can say this house may have lead paint, but you need to get it tested. They can't say if it has lead paint or if it doesn't have lead paint, and all the background information and all of that of where it's come to. So really just keep it like sound bites and easy to understand. So I think probably the easiest thing to do is if I share my screen and just go through what I compiled from all of your comments regarding the handout, and then what she suggests including or not including. And then from there, we can start developing. I can work with Florencia and we can start developing this handout, bring it back to Crack to look over and comment. And then we can kind of keep doing that until we have the final version. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. So to have QR codes for easy access for the CRP, the Massachusetts Coastal Flood Risk Model, and then giving for these two and the FEMA erosion projection map, giving sort of easy directions about how to use it. And so for these two models, you can easily put in an address that you're interested in and it will pull it up. So just having them be able to use that. A QR code for the Coastal Resilience webpage, and then just stating, that Nantucket has one of the highest erosion rates in the state, including the different sea level rise scenarios. She did not suggest adding in tables, and then to include the maps indicating flood and erosion risks for buildings. She did not suggest including the losses of the money equated to the losses and damages out to 2070. So it'd be beneficial to keep it to 2030 instead of having it go all the way out to 2050 or 2070, because said in real estate agent eyes, that's far away. And so to keep it relevant, keep the risks and the information out to 2030. And also not to, not to use like scare tactics or anything like that. So that 2050 stuff is out, to include the potential coastal resilience districts, if that passes at town meeting, different risk summaries, and what's this part? And then I think Peter had added this in from page 139. So that is her input. Interested what your input is about this. And if once you read this over, if there's anything that is missing that you think that we should add to it. And I'll open it up to the committee.
Dead silence. Okay, someone's gonna have a comment. Go ahead, Doug.
If no one else is going to talk, I'll always be happy to chime in. I am curious, Leah, it is curious to me why some of these things were listed as no when they're a clear statement of fact. And I just wonder to what degree the person you're working with here is trying to be sensitive to, the realtor audience. I mean, a fact is a fact. And I don't know how, back to our earlier conversations around here, realtors can do the right thing and inform people, or they can be salespeople. And I guess I would want to poke a little bit, if you haven't already, as to why some of these things are listed as no. Thanks.
I'll try to answer that. So when we were speaking, So this handout, and this kind of runs into the next part of this of the agenda item, is this handout would be given by the actual entity that is putting on the classes. So they put on the classes all over Massachusetts. The teacher, her name is Isabel Perkins, she was the one that suggested, hey, do you have any handouts that we can give real estate agents so when they take the class, they can have this handout as well. And it aligns with their, licensing and all of that, and what they can and cannot say, and all of that. So that is why I think some of those no's are on there. But because it would be coming from, PRAC is helping develop it, but ultimately it would be coming from the third party that is putting on these classes, if that makes sense. And then on the flip side, also creating a handout for prospective buyers or homeowners from CRAC, and you guys can put in any information you want, but real estate agents have to be very specific with information, with what information they, I guess, can share and what knowledge they can share with the buyers.
Does that answer your question, Doug?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have other questions or comments? Okay, so Leah, you're asking us, what are you asking us to do? Sorry.
I'm asking you to add any additional ideas or comments to this handout that would be given to real estate agents after they complete the continuing ed class regarding coastal resiliency. If there are no extra comments, then I'm asking if it is okay to move forward with actually creating the handout, and when that's ready, bringing it back to CRAC for you all to comment on.
Okay, now's your chance, everyone. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. I guess you're all set, Leah.
Okay, great. The next one is, I'm sorry, there's other people in my office. Hopefully you can hear me. So this will be for, I'm going to stop sharing now. So the next one, the next bullet point is develop text for buyers. So I'll send an email regarding this, but if there's any comments now that you of information you think that should be included on that too, feel free to let me know.
Okay, not hearing any comments. Are there any members of the public that wish to add to this? Okay, we'll move on to number 8, update on 2023 to 2030 CRP recommendations that have not been started yet, and discuss prioritization list. And this is Leah.
Thanks, Peter. I'll continue to share my screen again. So I created, I'm just using what's on the packet, but a PowerPoint that has 3 slides that I went through the CRP, saw which projects are slated for 2023 out to 2030 that have not been started yet, or are, that haven't been started. So I know for many meetings, you guys have talked about kind of prioritizing the priority projects and coming up with a list. And so hopefully we can start that today. I'll run through all of them. Let's see. Okay, so the first one is updates to zoning bylaws. The champion for that is Plus, and the co-lead is NRD. So that's updating the zoning bylaws to encourage resilient design and limit investment in areas of high coastal risk. So that has not been started yet. The next one is the strategic retreat and relocation program that is championed by NRD and co-led by Plus. And again, I had mentioned that that is in for a capital. Do you have a question, Doug?
sorry, Leah, just a comment or maybe a suggestion back to Peter. As you're thinking about your comments to the to Concom, it might be useful just to go back and reread 1-2 and the language that's in the CRP relating to updating the zoning bylaw. Is that a different thing? That's zoning. Never mind. Sorry.
Okay. So the strategic retreat and relocation program, that's in for a capital request. And oh, I see Matt has his hand up. Matt, do you want to comment?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hit my mute. No, on 1-2, what is the process that they're doing to come up with these, the zoning? Who's making the determinations, what happens and how, and is there a committee that's set up? Is it a consultant that's hired?
So nothing has happened yet, and that's all on the table. I think what would happen is maybe, well, obviously restarting the conversation with Plus. Vince had spoken to them, I think last year or 2 years ago, and they weren't capable or interested in taking on this yet. So starting that conversation up again, and then I envision either staff going through the zoning bylaws and seeing, which portion should be updated in regards to coastal resiliency, and or having town council look through that as well.
All right, well, because I think that maybe we should be, and we don't have to do it today, but maybe, I think it's not happening. And if it does happen, we might be disappointed because they, and nothing against them, but they are, sort of customer service to the development industry at this point, Plus is. And they have a very strong viewpoint. They deal with people that have a strong viewpoint all day. I think that maybe we've got to put together, a 5-person, 7-person, group, committee, et cetera, with them, with resources, natural resources, maybe the land bank, maybe a crack member, people that, and we need people that know what other zoning has been changed in other areas and that are in favor of this. We want some people on that committee that are speaking in favor of these changes for the benefit of the island, not people who are saying no. And so I think, maybe what we could talk about in a future meeting is putting a letter together, suggesting a process to get there, since we haven't got there yet. All right, thank you.
Okay, those are all great ideas. Rachel?
Thank you, Leah. I guess I was also wanted to ask, based on what Matt was just saying, if I don't know who made the champion and co-lead designations, but could we entertain the idea of flipping those so that NRD was the champion and Plus was the co-lead? I mean, I completely recognize the need for their involvement and their engagement, but at least, and I do think that in projects, leadership can shift over time too, but to at least get this up and running and, steer it in the right direction, like Matt was saying, would it be possible for NRD to be the drivers? I know you've got a lot on your plate, so I'm just adding more, but just a thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I think to answer your question about who decided the champion and co-lead, that happened during the whole CRP planning process. But again, this is a living document, so dates can change and champions and co-leads can change as well. But yeah, well, I think that's a good idea for NRD to kind of start the ball rolling, and then working with Plus and the other organizations or entities that are have to do with zoning and bylaw stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna move on if there's no other questions regarding that. The next one is the stormwater management plan. That is hasn't been started yet, but it's kind of in the works. The sewer department is hiring a stormwater manager, and I think once that happens, then they can start working on this plan as well. And that kind of runs in with the stormwater bylaw assessment 1-12 and also 1-13. I see that all kind of happening together and all at once when that stormwater management plan is developed. Rachel.
Lot to say today. Thanks, Leah. I wanted to say that, we're working with Charles and they did get that portion of the EPA Region 1 grant that is doing basically, starting to look at stormwater management plan, looking at stormwater management issues downtown and identifying recommendations for reducing stormwater flooding. Kind of all of this is incorporated into the money that they got with that. And that they're going to be working with Horsley Witten on a feasibility assessment for kind of what's the biggest bang for our buck. So thanks.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's great news. So the second one, or 1-11, is the sediment budget. That can't happen until the sediment transport, the harbor sediment study and dredge plan is finished, and then that sediment budget recommendation can get underway. 2-5 is the building scale resilience, which I had mentioned before. That is, I'm going to be putting in, I think I'll be putting in an application for the offshore wind grant to do the feasibility assessment and risk assessment for that on behalf of the town. The next one is the Ames Ave Bridge Resilience 3-2. There is, in fiscal year 24, there is $1 million allocated for that one, and for kind of the 3-4 as well, the Connecticut Erosion Management Highland Ames Avenue Bridge. The next one is the Department of Public Works Facility and Landfill Resilience 3-5. So that is kind of underway right now. They're figuring out, town administration is figuring out different options of where that can go. There's a meeting on Thursday regarding the landfill portion of it. And so we'll see what comes out of that meeting. 4-4 is numerical modeling study of CO2 breaching. We had reached out to Arcadis because they're doing the sediment transport study within the harbors to see if we could kind of piggyback this onto that study, because they're going to be creating some sort of like water quality numerical model for it. And the prices that they came back with were a lot more expensive than what was originally in the CRP. So the low cost, which would just be a model for one breaching, is $350,000, and then high would be a model for 5 breachings, and that's $800,000. So in the CRP, it was slated for $250,000. So that's that.
Well, can I talk on 4.4-4? So I guess this is more Jen Carberg's area, but there was the study that was done by, a strategic planning study done by trustees of reservations and the Nantucket Conservation Foundation, identifying the 4 critical areas on those properties where they were concerned about breaches, about protecting their resources. And one of them was Second Bend, I believe. And there was, another one was the east side of Hulliver Pond. Another one was the east end of Cascada Pond, and then I believe up on the Galls. And each one of those vulnerable areas, they had some sort of natural solution, building up the dunes, planting beach grass. So maybe you could just make note of that the Conservation Foundation already has ideas for what you're talking about there, and then I'm sure Jen can help you.
Yeah, I'm aware of that as well. That's actually that's a separate CRP recommendation, and I don't have it in here because it's currently underway with NCF and the trustees. And Jen, you can jump in if as well. From my understanding, there is a grad student, I think, or post or PhD student that is going to be looking at sediment transport around CO2 and potentially breaching as well, but they don't really have a time frame yet of when that modeling would be completed. I think they said 3 or 4 years or something like that. Is that correct, Jen?
Yeah, thanks, Leah. Pete, we've passed over the results that we have from the studies you were mentioning that was looking at very specific targeted areas around the refuge. And we've ended up focusing in, and we have a grant to actually develop nature-based solutions on 2 of those areas, the Hallover and Coscata Pond. So that's what's in the works now. As far as this 4-4, part of the money that we had from the first grant did go to a graduate student that's doing work that would get at this numerical modeling and looking at the breaching around the entire refuge and thinking about impacts on navigation. But that is not moving as quickly as we would like, and there's been some turnover in the students that are associated with it. So I think it's still a priority that if there's a consultant that ends up doing work faster than that, I think it should stay on here as a task, because we don't necessarily have clarity on how fast we're going to get those results.
Great.
Thanks,
Thanks, Jen.
Jen.
I see. Matt, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I can do it quick. The study that Peter Brace just mentioned is worth reading for some of the new members that haven't read it. And the one takeaway, I know there's a lot in there, but the one takeaway I get is we need sand, sand, sand. A lot of those natural solutions are going to require a lot of sand. And so one of the keys for us as a community or CRAC is finding a viable sand source, so that, and I know we're working on that a few different ways, but it's, it's worth reading. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, and once the dredge plan is complete, we'll have more of an idea of where some of that sand can come from, locally, so that we don't have to have it shipped over from off island. All right, I'm gonna continue. So 5-4 is Wisconsin Bluff Nearshore Breakwater Feasibility Study. I suggest that we kind of reevaluate this in 2030, since there's already 2 projects happening on Wisconsin Bluff. That's the Baxter Road relocation, and then updated NOI for the geotubes. The next one is the Surfside wastewater treatment plant dune restoration. This is a really high priority. After all of the storms that we've had, it's lost significant amount of dunes, and I think that needs to be kind of bumped and put. Well, I mean, it's slated for 2025, but start the conversations and get the feasibility study and risk assessment for that. The next one is the Surfside emergency access planning. That's what I had mentioned before. That'll probably cost maybe around $50,000 or so to get that. And that area in the FEMA maps, it is projected to be eroded, I think by 2030 or so. So that's kind of, I see this one as sort of an easy win. There's not much that really needs to go into it in order to check it off. Moving forward, so 2.1 Steamboat Wharf Resilience, that's slated for 2030. Vince had initial talks with the Steamship Authority, and they had that kind of put out to another 8 to 10 years or so. They need to finish their terminals on the mainland before they can think about the Nantucket one. I will say that we did have the kickoff meeting for the Easy Street, or the downtown neighborhood flood barrier, the first phase. So Easy Street and Steamship Authority will be a stakeholder in that, so we can continue that conversation with them about what their resilience plan is for the wharf. Matt, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I had a dream last night about this. Well, not about this steamship. I know it's pretty sad that this is what I think about all night. It's all right. You can laugh. that what I was thinking about is we're talking about Washington Street and how much it's gonna cost, and then from Washington to Main Street and other areas. And I'm not sure what the steamship is going to do when they look for their money, but I'm guessing that they may have access to a lot more money than the town would have access to. Part of their responsibility, or part of what they may be able to also ask for if they're going to the Army Corps or somewhere else to, federal money, is access to their wharf. They don't have to just fix their wharf. They actually have to make sure that people can get there. And so it might be a way, it's good that we have, representation in their work group, but I want I want you guys to be thinking about, is there a way to tag along and help pay for, Washington Street and some of the other areas that we need to fix so people can even get to the wharf? Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. That's a good point. Sounds like it was a good dream. So the next one is 3-1 Matticat Road raising and bridge conversion. That target implementation date is 2030. The following implementation date is 2030 as well. It's Sconset Bluff dune restoration. And then we have Codfish Park dune restoration as well, targeted for 2030, and sand pumping feasibility study targeted for 2027. So those are all of the recommendations that are target implementation dates, again, from 2023 out to 2030. Peter, I don't know if you want to take over and start the conversation of how you want to prioritize these.
Well, we got 16 minutes if we're not going over. So how soon do you need these prioritized by?
It doesn't matter. You guys have been talking about it for a couple months, so if you need to put it out to the next week, you think about it, have it all set in, and then come with a list for the next meeting and the following.
Let's make it a. And if you could send us an email, Leah, just telling us what to do. I mean, I think we all know what to do, but it doesn't hurt to get a reminder. Does that sound good to everybody? It is January after all. Sure, nobody has anything to do for the next month.
Peter, it's me, it's Matt.
Yeah, you have another dream?
No, this isn't a dream, it's a suggestion.
Okay.
Is also, what does staff recommend? What is their recommendations on this priority based on the work they know more than all of us know. They know what's moving forward, what's funded, what isn't, what is, so they know more than we do. It would be great to get a recommendation for our board to react to, and to get it in time for us to, chew on it and then react. Thank you.
Does that sound possible, Leah?
Yeah, definitely. None of these have gotten started. There's money allocated for the Ames Avenue Bridge, but that's all that there is. So that's to answer your question, Matt. I do have a list, but I'm happy to send that around with the email as well, so that you can all look at it.
Yeah, please send that around, and for committee members, don't just fall back on that list. Feel free to break out and comment and say what you think. Go ahead, Gary.
Leah, I just have questions on the first two. You may have said it during the discussion. 1-2 and 1-4. With respect to each of those, in who's at the present time, does someone or organization or group have the responsibility to be looking at that, whether it's the update to the zoning law or the strategic retreat and relocation program? Does someone have that particular assignment, any town group or committee, or each of those two things? Who has the current duty currently to actually start thinking about those things? Anyone?
Yeah, so in this column right here, it says champion or co-lead. The first one is the group or organization that should be starting that. And then the second one is the co-lead, so helping them with it. So for this first one, the CRP recommends that Plus be the champion for that to start it off. But Rachel had suggested kind of flip-flopping that. And then for the second one, the strategic retreat and relocation, that's my department to start that off, and then Plus to help out with that as well.
And neither of those anything has been done on either of those at the present time. Is that correct?
So this one, the strategic retreat and relocation, that's in for a request for capital funding. So the capital committee will decide if that's going to get funded for fiscal year 25. If it does not get funded, I believe we have funds within Article 10 that are the coastal resiliency funds that can fund that project. So hopefully that'll get off the ground in the near future. And then this first one, 1-2, nothing has started with that yet.
It would be great if someone started to, I guess it's Plus's job as someone, to take a look and see what other communities at risk, at risk of coastal erosion and things like that, what other communities have actually taken steps to actually change their zoning laws to deal with that. But that question is, no one's started that yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that being, one of the first steps. And when this gets off the ground is to see what other communities have done and how they've done it.
How do we make it a priority for Plus?
Add it into your list of top 10 or top 15
Okay.
priorities that need to happen.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Gail. Sarah?
There's probably a relationship between the update to the zoning law and what the Conservation Commission is doing with respect to the wetland regulations, but I guess they're separate entities and they'll do their separate thing.
Okay, Sarah.
Thanks, Pete. So this is just a clarifying question. For some of the things that are further out, like some of the 2030 things that are listed on here, is the target implementation date for something like Raising Matticat Road when there's a goal for starting the actual construction, or is 2030 like this is when we'll start thinking about it and we might have money to start a feasibility plan? And like the follow-up question to that is part of our sort of homework or looking at our priorities. Now, since the CRP was created, we might know a little bit more. There might be more interest in like pushing some of these things that are out to like 2030, 2050. Can we make them sooner? Or are those dates sort of like hard lined?
Yeah, I can answer some of that. So the target implementation dates were developed by you all and all the stakeholders and stuff based on the risks and what the probability is of flooding and that sort of stuff. So that's where those dates came from. But they're not, I don't see them as hard dates. I see this whole document as a living document and that it should be updated, and priorities that are maybe low priorities, something happens, it becomes high priorities. Example, Sheep Pond Road. That was a moderate priority, and I think the target implementation date was further out, but then it eroded and we had to do something. So it's all up and open for the tape. It's all open for different dates and changing it around and that.
Thanks, Leah. Okay, shall we move on? Okay. Number 9, update on Article 10 regarding coastal resiliency funds by Leah Hill, Town of Nantucket Coastal Resilience Coordinator.
Peter, I see that there's 9 minutes left in the meeting. If people don't want to go over, this is going to be a little bit longer too. So
Want to
if you want me
continue
to,
next meeting?
it's up to you.
We got 10 more minutes. How do we all feel about going for another hour? Come on, I'm just kidding. If it's not time critical, then we can do it at the next meeting.
Yeah, okay. Can you vote on that?
And
Motion to continue.
Second.
okay, roll call vote. Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Abby DeMolina,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Okay, so public outreach, ideas, strategies from committee members. How long do you think your thing will be, Doug?
2 minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
Just real quick, I'll hit the highlights. You don't have to read the eye chart again. Leah and I have been exchanging notes over the last few weeks. There's definitely been a little bit of a lull in terms of participation with our partners in terms of reposting our content. But hats off to Leah as she keeps plugging. And I'd say that the big good news is that over the holidays, she began a series of video interviews with Envision Resilience, which I thought was terrific, and they will be repeated. So that's good. And then another one that we were really pleased by was the Conservation Foundation included a nice feature story about the CRP in their December e-newsletter. You know, I think as we get into the new year, it's probably time to get reinvigorated and re-encouraging our partners to participate more actively. One other bit of good news that's not covered here, and I just wanted to make sure everyone knew about it, is as I'm surveying the social media landscape looking for CRP related stories that we've posted getting shared, I'm also seeing lots of CRP related content being posted independent of us by many of these other aligned organizations. So what you're seeing on that spreadsheet is really just the tip of the iceberg. I think a lot of other organizations are constantly posting news updates, good news, what have you, on progress that they're making, and helping to educate the audience out there. So that's all I got. Was that 2 minutes?
Close enough, Doug. Thank you. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks. I just want to clarify, it's with Acclimate, not Envision Resilience, the little soundbite. So, and then in Daybreak Nantucket on Monday, I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was a little write-up about the survey that you all produced, and had a link about that. So go check it out. That was exciting.
Okay, any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. Site visit discussion and determine date and time. Leah and I were discussing that we should all get out to the Surfside sewage treatment plant and take a look at that site at the convenience of the committee in between now and the next meeting. So we have limited time to discuss this, but maybe if Leah could send out a poll of some sort and you guys could all respond, the most of us that could get there would be great. And I'm hoping that we can visit more sites throughout the year so that we can see the critical areas. But I would say starting with the Surfside plant would be the most critical. We all feel good about that? Yes. Can you send out some sort of poll, Leah? Can you do a poll?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. So just to clarify, it's the week that you don't have a meeting, or do you want to do it during the meeting time frame?
Yeah, the week that we don't have a meeting. I think we need every meeting date. So our next meeting is on the 23rd, is that correct?
I believe so. Let's see. Yeah.
So this week seems kind of stormy, so hopefully next week won't be as bad. So just send a poll for that week.
Okay.
All right, great, thank you. Item 12, approval of minutes from December 12th, 2023. Did we all get a chance to look at them?
Move approval.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Okay, second and third by Gary and Doug. Okay, by roll call vote, Gary Beller,
Aye.
Man.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Abby DeMolina,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman,
Aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Okay, New business committees and natural resources department reports from our various boards and representations. Does any of our members who represent these boards have reports for us? Anything they want to say?
I'll go. Hi, guys.
Okay, go ahead, Abby.
Just wanted to quickly mention, because we were talking about at the beginning, the historical commission is also planning on submitting for a fund, so I just wanted to give you that.
Can you say that again? Because you're kind of cutting out. They're submitting what?
For a project for the Vineyard Wind mitigation funds. So they're also submitting, the project is looking to do an update. It's also kind of educational, letting people know, how, like, doing projects that are based on salvage, you know, reuse, those types of things. And so it's supportive of like the concept of resiliency, just has a
Which group is proposing to do this?
the historical commission.
Okay,
So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that they're also submitting, and just FYI.
excellent. Thank you.
And I can forward, like, I think they're gonna have the official, I was told we're gonna send a draft to Vince by the 18th. So if I get a draft, I will just share it with you guys so you have it as FYI.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And Gary, at the beginning of the meeting, you had something when I asked for public comment. Did you?
I already covered that when I talked about the comments from the person who was helping out the Conservation Commission, and his comments that you know, the CRP is not part of the current wetlands regulation. That's all I was going to talk about. By the way, the one other comment that I have generally, in addition to all of the comments that, besides what we say about coastal resilience issues, I've noticed a significant amount of press over the last few weeks, which is something that we always thought would do some of our work for us. And that is the fact that the insurance industry has finally woken up to the fact that coastal erosion and storms are causing tremendous damage to their earnings. I think of all the companies that are pulling out of insuring, whether it's here where I am in Florida or in California or other places. And that's something that will certainly militate against people wanting to buy property, you know, on these shorelines and start building things when it turns out that they are either unbelievably expensive to insure or insurance not even available for them. So that's kind of helping us. I thought a long time ago, between the banks not giving mortgages and the insurance industry not providing insurance, it would slow down the pace of real estate development on the shores. But in Nantucket, with all the billionaires spending their billions, they don't really worry about insurance or mortgages. But I think it's actually starting to take effect now. And I see a lot of press about that.
Yeah, I think I was seeing that as well. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. Jen, did you put your hand up or your?
Yes, I was just gonna make apologies. I need to leave for another meeting before I try and get off the island before this weather. But I don't want to leave you without quorum.
Okay, it's gonna be over quick. Leah, were you gonna do an update on the December 18th storm? And if you were and we're pressed for time, are those 3 items down there things that we could put forward to the next meeting?
Sure. Jen, if you do leave, there'll still be quorum.
Okay.
So I'll be quick too. So after the December 18th storm, I went out and did all the erosion monitoring. One of the spots at Sewerbed Beach lost 41 feet of dune in Coastal Bank. The other area that I put up a social media or a reel on social media that showed that one of the areas that I was looking at, I literally had to run because a huge wave came in and was coming for me through the fence. So that area lost a lot as well. And then the other area on the other site closer to Maya Comet Pond, all of our stakes are gone there. And so that area was relatively stable, and we lost at least 36 feet during that one storm. There's another storm coming tonight until tomorrow, and it's supposed to be equivalent to that December 18th storm. So I'll be out in the morning doing my rounds for monitoring flooding downtown in the downtown area. And then after the storm, I'll do post-storm measurements for all of the erosion monitoring sites on the South Shore. And then for the next bullet, an update on the downtown neighborhood flood barrier initial phase project. So the town has hired Arcadis as the consultants for that. And we had our kickoff meeting last week. So that project is starting. We have at the end of the month a waterfront structure assessment that's going to look at the bulkheads on Easy Street. So Rachel will be contacting you about that as well. And so we are, getting that project kicked off. It's an 18-month, well, now it's an 18-month project, and we'll be developing a community outreach and engagement portion of that with all the stakeholders. The next bullet is an update on DEP draft resilience regulations. So I sent that to all of you guys. If you want the full drafts, just let me know. I can send you the link, but really it's what Daniel from the director of Mass DEP Waterways had come on, a couple months ago to give us an update, and that's what we see. So for that, let me see, I took some notes. They added just a bunch of definitions, resiliency added in there. For any engineering and construction standards, they have to design and construct to incorporate impacts from projected sea level rise. So that's a new thing, and that's good. And they also have to refer to resilient.mass.gov for the most up-to-date data and maps for those. The wetlands regs, they had some updates about that for NOI and areas subject to protection, construction. They need a construction plan for erosion, sedimentation, pollution prevention plans. There's a lot of projects and updates and definitions for stormwater management standards. And for working along the shoreline, the application have to consider restoration, enhancement, recreation with natural methods, so nature-based methods, instead of the standard kind of hard coastal engineering structure. So that's a new thing added into there. And then they also added that roads can be elevated to reduce impacts from sea level rise. So some good things at the start, but it's nothing too major. That's all I have.
All right, thanks, Leah. Anybody have any comments? I think we're all ready for lunch. Are there any public comments? No. Okay. Discussion on updating on upcoming meeting dates and topics. Next meeting is January 23rd, 2024 on Zoom. Leah's going to send out homework. And I guess that's it. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Gary Beller.
I say aye. And by the way, let me suggest that when you folks go to look at the sewage treatment plant, whatever you're looking at next week, someone could take some videos like they did when you did this concert thing, because some of us are 1,000 miles away and won't be joining you. But I'd like to see what you see as well. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks, Gary. Doug.
Aye.
Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
Abby DeMolina.
Aye.
Sarah Boyce.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thanks for a great meeting, you guys. Really, thanks.
Stay well.
Wish me luck on Thursday.
Oh, good luck, Peter, on Thursday. Let us know.
You'll do great, Peter.
Okay.